I often look at the 5 intrinsic motivators. I mentioned it a few times on previous pods and stuff like that, but you have curiosity, your mind naturally going towards this thing. Curiosity, mastery, second one, ability to endlessly improve at it. Autotelicity, just wanting to do the actions in and of themselves, like not necessarily doing this for a goal of like, I want to complete university so I can get a job. It's like doing things for their own sake. Then autonomy, it's number 4, having that within there. You're nodding as well. You're like, come on, get the 4th, get the 5th. Autonomy, having that kind of freedom within what you do, that you enjoy it to that extent. And then purpose at the end. Purpose is kind of a hard one to pull it out. But if you have that, if you're able to find something where like those are all being kind of engaged, I suppose it's really impactful. And I think maybe a lot of people listening they're probably doing something where they maybe have maybe they've one of those things present, or maybe they could have none, or they could have a couple of those things present. I feel like you're kind of like graduating up those 5 to like where you can kind of see them all be present. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure purpose, like how would you work to like pull that out of someone? Like how can someone work on almost finding what they may find purpose in?
I love that question, because it's not easy. How we do it is, purpose is something you're intrinsically wired to seek, right? It is something that you have subconsciously assumed it is a way of, living a life worth living. So we got to see what you subconsciously have already wired, right? We need to understand what are the things you've been exposed to when you were young, right? What are the things that actually shape your subconscious? Because as you know, the subconscious is shaped it's always shaped, right? We're always working on it, but mostly in the early ages. And once we understand exactly what are the motivators, right? So normally what we will look into is what are you naturally leaning towards, right? So we look at the strengths, we look at skills, we look at story, we look at what you spend money on. There's a bunch of, we cross-test tons of things, and we create a hypothesis. Now, in order for the purpose to actually work as a valid hypothesis, we got to differentiate it from passion. Passion is something you're naturally interested in, that you like, but it is selfish. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be impacting others. And at the highest level of consciousness, which is what we're discussing when graduating to the highest levels, and when your awareness shapes an identity that is fluid, we were talking about that before, is always about service, right? You need, as a human being, you need to feel you have an impact every time, right? Every single time. And it doesn't matter what you do for the life, it's always the same. I was reading the other day about a comedian here in Spain saying that he's having like a tons of success lately, and he's doing shows every single day. And sometimes he doesn't really want to perform. It's like, hey, I'm just destroyed. Every time he has that, he just pulls up. He has some sort of roster of videos that his team prepared of people saying how laughing to his videos changed their lives because they were in a very bad state, or they were going through some sort of medical emergency, whatever. So he said, like, and then I'm fired up again, right? So what is that? It's purpose, right? This guy, whoever, right? You can be very good at something. You have passion for comedy, but you won't last until it is paired with purpose. So what we do is, all right, you're good at this. This is your passions. What is the impact you want to have? And how do we know that's true? That's very important. How do we know that's true? Because again, I'm very big on proof, right? I don't want opinions. What is the proof? What have you done in the past? What are you able to do in the future? What are you able to commit now? How do we make sure that this is a valid hypothesis? And this is how we find it.
Interesting, yeah, and that's definitely a process over time of it, because you need there as well, right? One of the factors is, okay, well, you need to have done many things previously, or shown had some success with other things as well, where you, like we're saying, building up proof almost in a way from having done things where
no, not necessarily.
You don't think so?
No. Why would you? No. Of course, purpose is something you're willing to do that impacts others, that is based on your intrinsic motivators. Why would you need, having proof is like a more obvious telltale sign, but that doesn't mean that you need it, right? There's teenagers, discovering classical music and deciding to commit their lives to classical music for their own sake. Just a random example, mm-hmm. Right? They're still not good enough.
I get you, yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, I suppose. Yeah, because you're not exactly going to have, let's say if it is, it's going to be something relatively specific that you're going to devote yourself to. You're not exactly going to have lots of reference experience of you having done that thing in the past.
Well, it's not that specific, you think about it, because it is not a destination. It is a direction. There's something people get wrong. It is a direction. It is something you're willing to explore in order to serve others, right? A vision is something specific. Purpose is not specific. It is a direction, right? Very clear example. Let's say that I purposefully feel connected to the problem of famine in Ethiopia. Random example from the top of my head. And I decide to commit to doing my best, no specificity, doing my best to solve that problem. That is purpose. Now, what is a vision? 10-year vision. Based on where I am right now in 10 years' time, I believe that based on this purpose, I can probably create a network of food banks that are public-private partnership with the Ethiopian government, in which I direct funds from, whatever, right? And I have like a very specific kind of image that I'm going after. The best example of this is one of my heroes, Buckminster Fuller, architect, system thinker, absolute badass, expelled from Harvard twice. First time, I don't know why. Second time, because they got him drunk. Totally guy. At 32, his company collapsed. His company, I think he had been funded by her wife's father, so like a huge family mess. So he decided he was going to take his whole life in order for her family at least get the insurance, right? We're talking, this is 1933, I think it is. So when he was going to take his own life by jumping into the Michigan Lake, he had a revelation. He heard a voice saying, that's not important, but he said, like, no, your life does not belong to you. It belongs to humanity, to the universe, to God, to whatever. You got to do something with it. And he purposefully committed to be useful to others, and because he wrote this down. And literally, we're talking about a guy who was thinking about suicide, getting suicide, never really graduating from Harvard, bankrupt within 32, and having a wife that could not work and a newborn child. So we're talking about bottom of the barrel, so to speak, right after the Great Depression. So it's not the best prospects, okay? And he said, I'm going to devote my life to see what, I think I'm paraphrasing, something along the lines, someone with average intelligence, not contacts, not money, can do for humanity. Things that even big governments, big companies cannot. That is a purpose. Now, what's the vision? Dude, he had no money, no connections. Like, what's the vision? I don't know. Like, the guy literally had no money whatsoever. He ended up becoming one of the most exciting people ever to be lived, at least in the 20th century. Architect, system thinker, philosopher. He was hugely popular. He created new types of structures. Well, I'm an architect at the end, right? So in the end, he's one of my heroes. Now, that is a purposeful life. Even if the vision was not there. Imagine if he had, funding and a proper company and, partners and workers. He could have done things differently. He could have planned a vision way better. But that direction for his life, remember, ended up building this life.
Makes sense. That makes a lot more sense. Why is purpose always in service of other people? So you mentioned that a few times. It's what can I do for humanity? What can I do for other people? Why is it always in service of others? It's never a selfish thing, it seems.
Because at the highest levels of consciousness, that is what it's all about, is serving. Remember, so highest levels of consciousness is how we call when you graduate from the lowest level emotions, right? This is Richard Dawkins' model. Shame, guilt, all that stuff, and you stop working with reason, and over time you reach peak performance and love, and over time you reach enlightenment. But the point is always based on love, is always based on service, is always based on connection, right? So that is just how we are wired. This is why all religions discuss this. Doesn't matter which God you believe in, is always the same. Is that we're reuniting with God. What is God? Infinite wisdom, infinite compassion, infinite love.